The United States National Safety Council was created in 1913 to promote a greater awareness of safety in industry, which after a year expanded to include road safety and accidents about the home. In 2022, over 55,000 businesses, public agencies, unions, schools and individuals are members. Each year this body would announce the strangest accidents which had been reported to them in the past 12 months. Here are some of the weirdest incidents reported over the years 1931 to 1954. Many of the incidents highlighted were amusing or just plain odd. Others were more pitiful. In 1931, a husband and wife saw their dog about to steal a roast chicken off the table. Both went to prevent this canine plunder, but the wife was holding a carving knife at the time and managed to carve off one of her husband's fingers. Another man got an electric shock while in the bath. It's not known if that hurt him, but in his surprise to get away he fell out the window, which probably did hurt. Also in 1931, a man tripped over a cow asleep on the path at night, which was probably not as astonishing as the motorcyclist in England who collided with an elephant. Also in England, in Exeter, cough drops in a policeman's pocket combusted and set fire to his uniform. Chemists deduced that chlorate of potassium in the lozenges was ignited by the friction from the wool the clothing was made from. A boy in Canada was made sick from swallowing a foreign object. Surgeons removed it from his stomach and found it was a safety first badge. From May 1938's report we have the tragic case of a 10-year-old boy who went into a stable to pet a horse. Sometime later he was found dead. Horses are large animals and their kicks can be deadly, and that would not be extraordinary. However, in this instance the boy had somehow had his throat encircled by the hair of the horse's tail and strangled. In Chicago, a gas explosion propelled a manhole cover over a 5-story warehouse. The iron disc came down in an elevator shaft, killing the elevator operator in front of his 2 passengers' startled gaze. Also in 1938, with a man whose peg leg froze in mud while he was hitchhiking, leaving him stuck to the spot for 3 hours, a 10-pin bowler whose fingers jammed in the holes in the ball, and instead of releasing the ball, struck himself in the head with it, and a little girl in Iowa who tried to fend off a spanking from her mother by holding out a can opener she was using, and managed to puncture her irate mother's hand. 1942 saw a remarkable acrobatic feat from a window cleaner named Eugene Grabb. He was cleaning the windows on the 7th floor of a building in Denver, Colorado, when he felt his safety harness belt slipping. He managed to hurl himself backwards, landing on the roof of a 4-story building 16 feet away. He broke both legs, but considered himself lucky to survive. From 1943, a soldier on manoeuvres in Tennessee was getting 40 winks when lightning hit the zipper on his sleeping bag, welding him tightly in. Another serviceman was on active service in the Solomon Islands when a bullet flew way over his head. He didn't totally evade injury, however, for it struck a coconut, which fell into the foxhole where Private Ernest Schofield was sheltering, and fractured his leg. James Hearn, aged 31, of Seattle, fell 3 floors down an air shaft and landed unhurt on a fortuitously placed comfy chair in 1945. Not quite so fortunate, but equally indestructible that year, was Charles Anderson of Los Angeles. He was repairing a wall when a concrete block fell 4 stories from a scaffold and cracked him on the head. Dazed, he staggered back and into the path of an oncoming motorcycle. He survived the consecutive misfortunes. Meanwhile in Australia, a youth cycling to work crashed into the back of a stationary car while he was reading a novel. More weirdness occurred in 1946. In Philadelphia, 2 women and a man advanced and started swatting Margaret Standring on the head. Bewildered, the woman wondered what was going on, until it was explained to her that her hair had been on fire. A cigarette dropped from a window had lodged in her curls and set them ablaze, without her realising it. A 3-car crash was caused in Hammond, Indiana, when the driver of one of them was stung by a bee, starting a chain reaction. More motoring mayhem in Fresno, California. 21-year-old Leonard Guara was going for his licence when he went to park at the end of the examination and nervously hit the accelerator instead of the brake and crashed through the examiner's office plate glass window. A fire in a bar in Hugo, Oklahoma was extinguished when the flames burned off the cap on a hydrant, releasing a flow of water. And lastly, in 1946, Mrs. Gilmore of Philadelphia had a radio program come on that she wanted to listen to, so she hurried to turn up the volume, tripping over a rug in doing so and sustaining minor injuries. She was listening to Hazards in the Home, presented by the National Safety Council. 1947 was also a strange year. A man amusing his son with a magic trick swallowed a razor blade and died. Charles Arter was working in a coal mine when he fell down a shaft 1,554 feet deep. He survived. He fell onto a lift that was descending and rode it down most of the way, with only a broken leg to show for it. In Lille, France, a tiler fell 6 stories from the roof. A mother walking her baby saw him falling directly onto the baby carriage. She quickly grabbed her baby out of the way and the man hit the carriage, which broke his fall. Neither man nor baby was harmed, but the mother fainted, and in doing so, broke her ankle. Stanley Morrison drove his car into the side of a train at a crossing in Murburyport, Connecticut. He had some explaining to do when the driver stopped the train and got out to inspect the damage. The train driver was his father. In Hollywood, a man had his car stolen. He borrowed another car to go report the theft to police. On the way, he was struck from behind by a car. Getting out to check for damage, he found he'd been hit by his own car. He held the driver until police arrived. 1948 had its own peculiar problems for people. James Drager in Wisconsin was enjoying a cigarette while he read his newspaper in his car. He put the cigarette down in the ashtray, and it set off a bullet which was there, which shot him in the arm. A woman in Ohio was the victim of an exploding sweet potato. Steam built up under the skin of the vegetable and caused it to explode when she opened the oven door. She was shocked, but not hurt. Someone slipping in a bathtub and being hurt would not be unusual, but James Anderson of California was hurt by a bathtub which slipped. It was one of 3 being transported on the back of a truck when it fell onto the roof of Anderson's car as he drove past. He suffered some bruising. In Arkansas, Polly Knott slipped on some ice and sprained her ankle. Seeing her plight, her sister rushed to render aid and also slipped on the ice, breaking her wrist. Polly's nephew saw what had happened and went to help. Yes, he too slipped on the ice and broke a leg. In 1949, a 13-year-old boy playing baseball in Oakland, California was chasing a fly ball when his pants exploded. He had some matches in his pocket which were ignited by friction, and these in turn had set off some crackers which he was also carrying. Perhaps the origin of the scurrilous poem about the boy whose crackers blew off certain rhyming parts. In Cincinnati, another young ball player had his nose broken by a ball which bounced unexpectedly and struck him. As he sat on the bench, a few minutes later, a bat broke, and one of the pieces of wood hit his aching nose. Taken to hospital, it was found that the second blow had reset his nose, so he went home. A box of cookies started a fire in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The box fell onto a faucet, turning on the water. The biscuits then clogged the drain, causing the water to overflow and seep through the floor, and short-circuiting the electrics, which started the fire. In December 1953, we learn of the misadventures of a 2-year-old girl, Mary Jane Redden, of Memphis, Tennessee. She was playing in the family car when she managed to drive it a short distance from the driveway into the living room. The little motorist was unharmed. It wasn't only children whose driving was reckless in 1953. In Lincoln, Nebraska, a dog pawing on the gear lever backed his mistress's car into another one. To complete a trio of weird traffic accidents, A rowboat was lifted from the water by strong winds in Holland, Michigan, and slammed against a vehicle. Pain was certainly experienced by Robert Heinbohr in Paynesville, Ohio, when he was shot. While it's not unusual for people in Ohio to be shot, it is rare that they are shot by a lawnmower. While trimming his grass, he ran over a cartridge and got shot in the toe. Lightning was back to its old tricks when a bolt of lightning set fire to a furniture factory in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Fortunately, a second bolt hit the fire alarm of the building and set it off so that the fire department was summoned. In 1954, Jesse Spritzer braked suddenly for a train. His inertia carried him out of the car and onto the train tracks. He lay on his back unharmed as the freight train and its carriages thundered over him. Only when he stood up to leave did he realise his leg had been broken by the catapulting he had undergone. Morgan Wallace, who was a circus daredevil, made 113 parachute jumps without mishap, only to fracture his foot in a fall 18 inches off a ladder at home. And finally, a woman who had just been crowned Honey Queen was stung by a bee. Such are the improbable mischances awaiting you in the dark corners of history.